Hi guys, Kelvin and Pete from Bookkeeper Radio. Welcome to this special recorded edition. This resource is targeted towards BAS agents who are working with clients in setting up their single touch payroll requirements. You'll hear shortly about the recordings and the resources that Australian Bookkeepers Network is providing the community.
And as we know, or we're about to know, single touch payroll involves essentially two BAS provisions, basically pay-as-you-go withholding and superannuation guarantee. Now, those BAS provisions become a BAS service and are covered by the provisions of TASA and the requirements to be a registered BAS agent if the bookkeeper charges a fee for a BAS provision for either of lodgement, and that includes pushing the ST button because you're lodging those pay-as-you-go withholding and super details with the tax department, or giving advice about a BAS provision. And that means guiding the hand of the client or giving the client guidance and advice about pay-as-you-go withholding and super guarantee, irrespective of whether you push the STP button. So this is where the STP is inherently connected with the provision of BAS services.
So if you're not a BAS agent and working with payroll, then you're going to need to take some great care in what role that you do take in this process. So if you're not a registered agent in your own right, basically, as Pete points out, you're not really able to enter into an STP engagement with your client. So therefore, non-agents that are involved in processing payroll are going to need to ensure they do a couple of things. Firstly, if you're able to get a supervisory arrangement in place with a registered agent, whether that be a BAS agent or a tax agent, then there's going to need to be an adequate supervisory arrangement in place between yourself and that supervising agent. So that's probably step number one. And the reason, I suppose, is that there's got to be an STP engagement authority that exists between the supervising agent and the client whose STP is being dealt with, because basically that's where the arrangement sits, between the supervising agent and the client, not the unregistered agent.
And we're going to talk about authorities in the video.
We are, aren't we? Authorities feature in there. Alternatively, you could be an employee of the business, and as an employee, you're entitled to deal with single touch payroll on behalf of the employer, provided, of course, that they have added you as an authorised contact on their business portal. So there's a couple of ways there that you need to be able to deal or can deal with single touch payroll if you are not a registered agent, but you're really going to need to take care in that space.
Absolutely. So
look, from the team here at ABN, enjoy the resources. If you'd like to know a little bit more about what we do at Australian Bookkeepers Network, you can give us a call on 1300 856 710 or visit our website www.ostbook.net. Enjoy the videos.
Thank you.
Welcome to this special recorded version of Bookkeeper Radio.
Congratulations and welcome to you, mate. Can you tell me what the hammock is there for behind us?
Glad you asked, White Man. All right, so we've heard from numerous bookkeepers that there's a bit of panic starting to set in about single touch payroll and getting up and going with clients. So we thought, as all good Bookkeeper Radio hosts do, that we might provide you with some reassurance that the world's not about to end, and what we're facing at the moment is nothing more than really a transitional style period. So to be clear, from, and I guess from being the optimal word here, so from 1 July 2019, single touch payroll commences for smaller employers. So we're already in a regime where larger employers have been in the game basically since July 2018. They transitioned that group through, and Pete will talk a little bit more about that group in a moment. But the important thing to note is that right here, right now, there is a commencement date, and that is going to be a transition period to get your clients up and going with single touch payroll. We'll talk about that transition in a moment. So hopefully, as you'll see, by the time we end this particular session of Bookkeeper Radio Special, there's no need to panic. Sit back in your hammock, relax. We've got through until the 30th of September to transition your clients across, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. All right, so what's today's session about? We're going to do this episode in two instalments. We've Pete and I, in instalment one, are going to cover off on more of the theory of single touch payroll. We've already had a couple of Bookkeeper Radio sessions with John Shepherd over time, so probably worth going back and having a bit of a refresh on some of those. But today, Pete and I are going to cover off on some of that theory aspect of single touch payroll and just remind you all what it's all about and how it's intended to operate. So I guess this session's about getting your head in the game. Instalment one, we're going to have a bit of a chat about an overview of single touch payroll, the various categories of employers. There's a few different rules here. We're going to have a look at what the single touch payroll impact is on an employer, looking at the onboarding of a new employee to a business via STP, have a look at getting up and going with single touch payroll, the authorities that you need to have in place with your clients, and then looking at a couple of troubleshooting experiences that the ATO have already identified when dealing with the larger employers over the last 12 months. So that'll be instalment one. Instalment two then is actually getting your hands dirty. And we've invited a number of legends of the bookkeeping industry onto the show to walk us through the practical aspects of some of the major software. So we'll hear from Di Lucas, Kerry Jarius and Joe Crumpton in instalment two, walking us through a couple of those software processes to get you up and going with single touch payroll for your clients. And then not necessarily instalment, but this recording will be available on the ABN website. And available with that recording will also be a bit of a survival guide where we'll have a look at some further troubleshooting issues, some frequently asked questions, as well as a number of ATO resources and links. I think the ladies might also be providing us with a number of their own resources to include in that survival guide as well.
I believe you are right. I think we've got a few hints from the software companies there as well. So it's a handy resource that's going to be freely available.
Yep, great. All right, well, the first thing, as we noted at the in the outset, is really just to not panic. Take a big, deep breath. Thank you, big fella, and breathe out. Very good. And I guess the first thing to note about STP is that it's simply a reporting mechanism. So it's now reporting your payroll function, so tax, superannuation information, and that, of course, is being sent to the ATO in real time each time you undertake a payroll. So that's essentially what we're dealing with here. It's just nothing more than a reporting mechanism. So it's a new way of reporting, but not a new way of doing payroll. So for example, you still pay any pay-as-you-go withholding instalments via your monthly or quarterly activity statements, and you still report superannuation, the superannuation entitlements to employees through SuperStream. So none of those things change the way in which you report and pay. This new step is now what STP does, is report payroll in real time. And I guess the question is why? Well, its objective is to facilitate more timely reporting to employees. It provides more information to the ATO and other government services, so things like Centrelink. It allows for better auditing of non-compliant employers, and I suppose that's one of the main reasons why they're looking at single touch payroll as being a mechanism to report. And I guess as a byproduct, it's also going to encourage more employees into payroll software, which provide greater business efficiencies and better reporting to the business customers themselves.
And also, you haven't got any choice.
And there's no choice. It's mandatory.
It's mandatory.
It is. All right, so STP is just reporting payroll information to the ATO. There's three ways in which that reporting can occur. So the first of these is through the payroll software itself. And in the main, it's going to be done directly through payroll or accounting software. And it's been specifically enabled to report the relevant information to the ATO. Example of that I was going to use here is Xero, I guess together with certain MYOB versions. So that software has been specifically STP enabled, and that allows the STP reporting to take place directly from the software into the ATO resources themselves. The second way that's going to be STP enabled is to link that particular payroll platform with other software. And I guess and this software is then third-party software that's going to be sending that information to the ATO. So an example I'll use here is the QuickBooks platform. So QuickBooks itself have partnered with KeyPay to fulfill this function. So when you actually log in to QuickBooks, you're actually then logging into a KeyPay payroll product, and that KeyPay product rather is the product that then links to the ATO and reports that STP data. Separate to this again, you might have another third-party software provider where you actually can lodge the STP information through. So, for example, I know Reckon have built out an app that's available to the 1 to 4 employee market. And so again, this is basically an app that Reckon have provided that you rekey any payroll data into. So you might, for example, be using a manual product at the moment. So what you're simply doing is continuing to use that manual payroll product to do your payroll for employees, but then the STP data that gets reported is simply rekeyed into an app. In this case with Reckon. There's a number of apps on the market for that small 1 to 4 micro category. Some of them are free, some of them are up to $10. So that's available for the small micro section of the market. So those 3 ways: payroll software direct, either direct through the payroll or through a third party in the case of KeyPay and the QBA offering, or again through a totally separate third party app, as I just mentioned with the Reckon app. So they're the ways that you can basically report to the STP, to the ATO.
Brilliant. Okay, so with single touch payroll, we've got 4 distinct employer categories. We can see them listed there. There's those employers where they have more than 20 employees, and these guys should already be well and truly STP enabled. In fact, they're reaching the end of their first STP year, and they'll be looking to get through their finalisations in their first year end. For the next group is what we would call closely held groups. That's where employees are closely held, they're connected to the employer, typically family members. We've got another category called micro employers, and these are employers that have got 1 to 4 employees. And the final category, and this is going to be the majority of people from the 1st of July 2019, and these are anyone with 1 to 19 employees that are going to be approaching STP on a full enablement basis. We just roll forward one more slide and we put it into a bit more perspective with a bit of a timeline. So we can see on the left-hand column, before 30th of June 19, we have all our large employers that are reaching the end of their first full financial year under STP, and they'll be reporting their STP year ends, and they'll be loving the system. They're already on top of it all. So from the 1st of July 2019, we're just going to look at how each of those 3 smaller groups of employers are going to be treated. So firstly, the 0 to 19 employees, they're going to be afforded what we call a soft registration period. That means that this group of employers can register from that date, so anytime after the 30th of June 19 through until the 30th of September 19, the tax department have just said, come forth and register. You don't have to be pushing the panic button and register on the 1st of July. Any time up to the 30th of June, September is more than fine with the tax department. The 0 to 4 employee group, these are people that have 4 employees and they essentially aren't ready for STP, or they don't have a solution, or they're just not comfortable with it. The tax department have said, if you've got less than 4, we've got 4 or less employees, you can then opt for one of the quarterly lodgement options through a BAS or a tax agent. And there simply is a need for the BAS or tax agent to register with the tax department. They will be asked for some reasoning as to why you want the extension to go onto this quarterly method. But my understanding is there'll be no reasonable refusal of that. So simply they're there for those smaller entities that are simply not STP ready, or their software's not quite ready for them. The closely held group have a total exemption for the 12 months. So and there's seemingly no application required. They can simply continue to report under the old system, but again, that's only for the closely held for family members. This doesn't extend to their normal external employees. So we roll forward to the 30th of September, and those people that had that soft registration period, this soft registration period then ends. And from that date forward, the tax department have said you can request a further extension if you wish. And my understanding is, again, no reasonable request will be refused. Fast forward to the 30th of June 2020, and we have the 0 to 4 employees who have had their the extension to lodge quarterly through their BAS or tax agent, they can continue. So they've basically got a 2-year period where they can continue to roll forward under this quarterly basis. The closely held, the closely held entities, they can then revert. They've got their exemption has ended, but they can then revert and start lodging quarterly through their BAS or tax agent. Again, at this stage, no hint as to when that period would end or whether they need to revert to full STP reporting, but they've got the ability to flop onto a quarterly system. And fast forward another 12 months to the 30th of June 2021, and those micro employees that were given the 2-year window to report through their BAS or tax agent now need to be fully STP compliant. Their holiday has finished. So that's pretty well puts it into a perspective from a timeline and how each of those 4 categories of employers are going to be treated. Okay, now let's have a bit of a look at the effect of STP on employees. When it comes to the employee, one thing that is quite clear under the new system is that the best experience for the employee is going to be had by having an active MYGov account. We'll touch on that in a moment. And it may well be that when you're helping your employer client set up, that it may go hand in hand with helping their employees to connect to MYGov, and we'll touch on that in a moment. The next thing that employees are going to notice is that payment summaries are going to become a thing of the past. Some employees are still clinging to the fact that group certificates are a thing of the past. Well, payment summaries are also going to become a thing of the past. They'll probably have an existence for a few more years, but they'll become increasingly rare. So the notion of payment summary is being phased out, and it's been replaced by a thing called an income statement. And that income statement is going to be effectively a live payment summary, which is going to be updated each pay run, and it'll be housed within the employee's MYGov account. And once that employer has finished their STP year, that income statement will be marked as essentially tax ready. And at that point, the income statement can be used by the employee in completing their personal income tax return. The income statement is going to be an interesting thing. It's going to be able to be accessed through a number of avenues. The preferred avenue is going to be through the employee's MYGov account, but additionally, it will also be a copy will be supplied to that person, that employee's tax agent, if they have one, and as a backstop, they can always access it from tax office. So if an employee declines to take up a MYGov account, there are other means of accessing that income statement. But as the tax department have explained, the best experience they're going to have is going to be by using their MYGov account. Payment summaries, they're going to continue to be used by some employers in the short term as that employer transitions through to full STP enablement. Pay slips that you would expect under the Fair Work requirements, they will continue, and they'll continue into the future. This slide gives us a useful couple of tips in how to get your employees onto the page. It's important that your employee understands what STP has actually got in it for them, and there's a really useful document the tax department have put out there called Single Touch Payroll for Employees. And I would really urge you, if you're guiding your employers with their clients, is to put a copy of this in the hands of the employees, because what it does for them, it explains the STP's effect on them, and this document speaks directly to them. It talks about the importance of getting a MYGov account, and goes further than that. It says, okay, well, if you don't have a MYGov account, it'll actually give you some links to how to get one. If your employee has a MYGov account, and some do, but it's simply lapsed, they've lost their username and passwords, it actually gives you some hints and links as to where to go to rectify that. And the MYGov account itself is actually useless for the income statement unless it's already been linked to the tax office. So this document also gives you a link to get to a point where it explains step by step how to link that MYGov account to the tax office record. So that's essential in using the MYGov account. And I'm aware that there's been quite a few employees out there having difficulty in connecting their MYOB accounts to the tax office, and the tax department, they're quite aware of this. So they've actually put out a section of their site that explains the issues that people are having connecting MYOB to the tax office. So there's a little troubleshooting a section in that as well. So if you're helping your employees of employers get themselves ready for STP, I urge them to get a copy of this document. Now, this document will also find itself into our survival guide that we're going to make available to all viewers of the session. So you don't need to copy that down; it'll be made available to you.
All right. Well, we're almost there, getting through the session, but I suppose the next logical step is like actually getting up and going with STP. So as we noted, this is more the theory section, and the second tranche or instalment of our special Bookkeeper Radio will see a practical demonstration from a number of the major software entities, a couple of bookkeeping legends joining us to actually walk us through how those pieces of software specifically get you STP enabled, connected to the ATO and processing payroll. For now, however, let's have a little bit of a look at some of the theory in getting you up and going with STP with clients if you are providing a payroll service. So I guess the first thing to note here is that you can only offer a payroll service if you are a registered tax or BAS agent or are a registered payroll service provider. So if you're a bookkeeper that doesn't have those qualifications, then unfortunately you're going to be excluded from doing this STP work. The next thing is that you must be linked to your client in the ATO systems. Otherwise, the ATO will not accept single touch payroll reports lodged on behalf of an employer without that correct link in place. So if you are a BAS agent or registered payroll provider, in most cases you will already have that link to your client within the ATO systems now. And that will be either at a client level, an account level, or at a role level within your own BAS agent portal. Now, if you don't, for whatever reason, have this link established already, then you can create that link in a number of ways, but you cannot create it directly in the BAS agent portal. You'll actually need to establish the link through the ATO itself. There's a couple of ways you can do this. So in essence, it's through this thing called a unique software ID. And we'll demonstrate that process in the practical demonstration through the software itself. But there's two ways you can do that. You can either phone the ATO. There's a dedicated phone number, 1300 85 2232. And that's also embedded in majority of the software platforms that will actually enable you to contact the ATO on that number and provide them with this unique software ID. Or alternatively, you could also use what's called the ATO Access Manager. Now, if you key into your browser ATO Access Manager, there's a link that comes up which you connect to, and then that enables or brings up a screen which you can then connect the software that you're utilising, whether that be your own or the software of your client. But you can obviously link through this Access Manager. Kerry Jarius, I believe, has also spoken to us, and she said that Access Manager, whilst it's available in the portal, it's not something you can do through, sorry, not the portal, the OSFA, Online Services for Agents.
Say portal, say OSFA.
OSFA. So it's available in the Online Services for Agents. There's a little section there that says Access Manager on your home screen. So if you click on that, that will then take you to Access Manager. So it's actually deeply embedded, but it's not in OSFA itself. It's a separate section called Access Manager. So you can either get it directly through just a web browse, or it can be linked via OSFA, but it's not. It can't be done through the OSFA, if that makes sense.
I believe she's actually going to demonstrate that in session 2.
Oh, that would be great. All right, so I guess having set that link up, then STP reports can directly be lodged to the ATO via that unique software ID. And the next step then is to ensure you have a relevant authorisation in which to deal with STP on behalf of your clients. So Pete, would you like to walk us through that part?
Yes, I would. An STP lodgement is of itself a BAS service. Bringing it back to the definition in TASA, it's either a lodgement or you're representing your client to the commissioner. So you need to be a BAS agent, as you mentioned, which is correct. But the actual act of pushing the button and transmitting STP data is a BAS service. And we know that when you render a BAS service, you need an authority from your clients. Now, that can be problematic because if you're running 52 pay runs a year, that means 52 individual written authorities. This problem was known and explained to the tax department some while ago by your industry bodies, and the tax department saw the problem and said, oh, unintended. So what they have provided for is for you to have an annual authority with your client. So it's an annual authorization that enables you to continue to lodge STP for your clients with that one enduring authority. Covers a 12-month period. There are some exceptions to that, however, and the major exception, and it will affect everyone, is in the case of finalisations. Finalisations are deemed to be not covered by an annual authorisation, and you need a single event authorisation to deal with the finalisation. There are also some people out there, or employers out there, who are ineligible to have the annual authorisations. And these are employers that have, I've got a little bit of a list here, but these are employers that have overdue activity statement lodgements. They may have outstanding debts unless they're covered by a payment arrangement with the tax department. And they cannot be subject to ATO compliance activities. In addition to that, no directors of the entity, if it's a company, can ever have been issued with a director penalty notice. How you would know that, I do not know. But if you've got one of those exceptions, you need to be using the individual authorisation statements. Now, if you're an ABN member, there are samples of each of those in the member section of the ABN website, which are freely available and able to be tailored specifically to your individual payroll assignment.
All right, thanks for that, Pete. So that's pretty much session one, just I guess on the theory of it all. So that's getting your head in the game. We've covered off on those few issues from a theoretical point of view. Instalment two, we've invited a couple of legendary bookkeepers, Di Lucas, Kerry Jarius and Joe Crumpton, to share with us the getting up and going from a practical perspective and looking at the Xero, MYOB and Intuit software. And as Pete mentioned earlier, we've also got a survival guide where you can download that guide from our website, and that sort of looks at a number of troubleshooting issues, frequently asked questions, as well as some ATO resources and links. And then I think, as we said, the ladies have also provided us with a couple of their own, so we'll make sure that that's all in there as well. I guess one thing I just want to point out, there is a great troubleshooting ATO resource that's made its way into the survival guide as well. Just two issues I want to point out on that. There's a number of them in there, so go and have a read. But just two I want to point out. That's the first is if you're submitting STP for the very first time and you want to know whether or not the ATO have in fact received your very first STP report, the important thing is don't ring them. Apparently they got absolutely swamped by the large employers, just wanted to make sure that STP reports were being received by them.
Yes.
So what they've actually got in place now is a confirmation message. So if you receive the confirmation message, then obviously you'll know that the STP report has been in fact received by the ATO. But if you don't get one of those, then there is a problem. So you may need to then have a look at what the software is flagging as a particular problem and why that STP may have been rejected between the platforms. But you'll certainly receive a confirmation message from the ATO where a successful transmission has taken place.
Yep.
The second one I just want to point out is where you may have submitted an STP report and either that's been in error, so you've hit the wrong button, you've sent a report and gone, oh my God, I didn't really mean to send that. Or alternatively, you've submitted an STP report and then you realise it actually contains a number of significant errors in the data. So if this happens to you, then there is an opportunity to submit a full file replacement within a 24-hour period. So that full file replacement basically gives you the ability to go back, amend your data, and then relodge it and submit the correct data. So again, as we pointed out at the outset, STP is nothing more than a reporting mechanism, and every time you submit a file, the previous one is now defunct. So it's not like you submit an earlier report and then sort of they submit a report for the current pay run. The current pay run is the one that the ATO then recognised. Anything previously falls off the map. So it just means that when you're going to lodge or relodge a report, just recognise that that it's the current report that you're submitting that is the live file version with the ATO. Anything else prior, gone.
Each pay run is a fresh start. It's like goldfish theory.
It is.
Yeah.
Well pointed out.
Everyone's a fresh day.
All right, well, that concludes instalment 1 for the theory. Please make sure you go and have a look at instalment 2, which incorporates the product demonstrations about getting on and up and going with Xero, MYOB, and Intuit. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to joining you on another Bookkeeper Radio. Make sure you download the survival guide as well, some great resources in there. And for now, good night.
Good night.
Welcome to the second instalment of Single Touch Payroll. In the first instalment, Pete and I gave you a little bit of a look at the theory aspect to Single Touch Payroll. And in our second instalment, we were going to invite 3 legends of the bookkeeping industry, Di Lucas, Kerry Jarius, and Joe Crumpton, to share with us their experiences of the various major software houses that are dealing with Single Touch Payroll at the moment. So in our first session, we welcome Di Lucas. I'll just bring Di up onto the screen there. There she is. Hi, Di. Welcome to Bookkeeper Radio.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're very colourful today.
Always.
So in our first of the getting your hands dirty with Single Touch Payroll, Di is going to step us through the Intuit QuickBooks processes for Single Touch Payroll. So Di, I'll pass over to you, and you can start by telling us how you go about it.
Okay, wonderful. First of all, the boys are going to show a video on how to connect QuickBooks for Single Touch Payroll purposes. So something I prepared earlier for you, so you can follow that wizard through. So KeyPay has a lovely wizard that takes you through nicely.
Terrific.
With the deadline for Single Touch Payroll fast approaching, business owners who employ will be required to set up employee reporting for Single Touch Payroll via compliant payroll program. QuickBooks Online offers a simple solution for Single Touch Payroll reporting. From the Employee Centre, simply activate the file for Single Touch Payroll using the handy wizard. First step is to click on the Employee Centre. On the top right-hand corner is the green Enable Single Touch Payroll button. Click on that and then familiarise yourself with what is Single Touch Payroll, and once happy about that, click on Proceed. Confirm or update your business details and click on Next. This next section is about who will be lodging the Single Touch Payroll events for the business. As an employer, the employer will lodge all Single Touch Payroll submissions to the ATO. As a registered agent, the external registered BAS or tax agent will lodge all or some of the Single Touch Payroll submissions to the tax office. Or as an intermediary, the employer will lodge all Single Touch Payroll submissions to the ATO, and there is more than one employing entity set up in the business. Make your selection and click on Next. The final step is to let the ATO know the business's unique software ID. Using either of the two methods, provide the ATO with both the software provider name, KeyPay, and the software ID number unique to the business. Note, option 2 can still be used even if you do have an AusKey. Call the ATO on the provided number to register the software ID and allow about 5 minutes for the call. tick the acknowledgement box and then click on Complete to finalise the activation of Single Touch Payroll within your QuickBooks file. I know you're excited to get started, but please don't forget to register the business's unique software ID with the ATO. You're now enabled and ready to start your first Single Touch Payroll submission.
I hope you enjoyed that little snippet of a video and your file's now all set up for STP. We've said that one a few hundred times in the last few months, haven't we? Okay, what I want to do now is just quickly take you through how to process a pay run if there's any changes. I'm also going to talk to you about what happens if a pay event is changed and how you address those changes. And then finalisation for Single Touch Payroll purposes when it comes to year end, what do we do? But before we start that, let's have a look at our payroll settings. I just want to draw your attention to the setup of allowances. So if your file has got allowances in it, then once you've got STP set up, just jump into each allowance and make sure that it's actually configured back to the relevant ATO allowance account. By default, it'll be set up as default. And now for STP purposes, you actually have to point it to the right allowance type. All right, so that's the only thing you really need to do. Otherwise, typically what you'll find with KeyPay is that the pay categories are pointing to the right places anyway. All right, so with QuickBooks Online, you've got 3 different softwares. You've got Simple Start, Essential and Plus. And there's 4, 7 and 10 free employees associated with each of those files. So for a micro business of 4 or less employees, the Simple Start was probably a good option for them. So what happens with the pay run? Well, nothing changes basically. So once you have got all your employees set up and you've got your payroll configured and everything, you process a pay as per normal. So if that means that you have timesheets or whatever it might be, then you process the pay cycle exactly as per normal. So in this case, I've got a weekly pay run. I'm going to add some hours to my tie. Oops, not 125, let's try 15. Save that. The rest of the pay run is fine, so I'm going to finalise that one. So nothing has changed in here up until we get to this point here. So once we finalise a pay run, we've now got an option about how we're going to lodge this for Single Touch Payroll purposes. I'm going to select the Lodge Pay Run now, and the other option, of course, is to lodge that at a later date. But typically, we would want to be running the STP lodgement now as we finalise a pay run. So select the right radio button, click on Finalise. It's processing its normal payroll journal as you would expect, and then we get taken to a new screen. This screen here is where we review our year-to-date figures. Remember, STP is for year-to-date. If we want to see the figures underlying the pay run we've just processed, we can click on the little button there which shows us the pay run figures in blue and toggle that one off again, and we've only got the year-to-date figures. In this screen here, before we lodge with the ATO, we have the ability to make modifications for reportable fringe benefits. We can also mark an employee as final. This is final is typically used if you've got a terminated employee. If you're using the KeyPay wizard to terminate your employee, it'll bring through it in final tick by default because you've already terminated that employee. So the next step is to lodge with the ATO, but also we have this actions button here. There is an option here, mark all as final, which you could use for year-end finalisation, but I'm going to suggest that you don't, and I'm going to show you a different and better process of doing that rather than through the very last pay run. Okay, so you've done your pay run, everything's happy, it's still before year end, and we're going to now click on Lodge with ATO. This is where we need to make the declaration to say that we're actually allowed to submit this on behalf of myself being the employer or the agent on behalf of the employer. Tick that and lodge pay event. If I didn't have an annual authority as an agent, then I would need to rather than lodge, I would need to post a seek authority for authority to lodge, and that would be an additional button, but in this case I'm assuming that I have that authority. And as it says here, it's going through, and we don't have to sit on the program here and wait. We can actually close that down and revisit this one. You can see on the top left here in greyish, it says grey submitting, very sort of greyed out. In this particular file case, it's going to fail because this is not actually really connected to the ATO, but the process doesn't change. So let's just close out of here and assume that this payroll is going to process successfully. So what happens if we have a change to a pay run? So if something's, if we've processed a pay run and then we identify that there's a problem, quite easily we can go in and locate that pay run, so the one we've just done, and we can unlock that pay. So pay run actions unlock, and we can make some modifications then and there. So if that's an easy option for you to do, considering that you might have just a simple change, then that's a great process to do. Other options and recommended by KeyPay are to actually process a brand new pay run, picking up any adjustments and things like that. So if you haven't already got a pay schedule set up, the suggestion is that you would do an ad hoc pay run or pay schedule, which means that you can make adjustments to just one person. Okay, so rather than processing a new pay run that kicks everything out of sequence, you can set up a pay schedule called ad hoc and then run an adjustment pay run specifically for a particular employee if necessary. So let's move on to the last thing of the year. Let's assume that we've just processed our last pays of the year. What do we do then as bookkeepers to finalise the pay event for this particular business? So the first thing we want to do is make sure we've got all our cross checks and balances in place. So assuming that we've reviewed our wages figures against our P&L and done all our normal liability checks, etc., etc. So once we've ticked all those boxes for our cross checks and balances, what we want to do is we want to do what's called an update event. So the update event is through the report section of KeyPay. So click on reports. Under ATO reporting, we have single touch payroll. So in other words, the process doesn't really change to what we're used to with payment summaries. We're still doing our cross checks and balances, and then we're finalising the year using a create update event on the top right hand corner post the last pay run of the year. So in other words, we can do the last pay run of the year and sometime later before the actual requirement submission date, which happens to be July 30 for 2019, and then in 2021 it kicks back to July 14. We've got all that time to actually finalise this pay period for an active STP business. So what we do is we create update event. We select the pay schedule we're talking about. In this case, I'm doing weekly. If we also have monthly pays, we'd need to do two separate update events, one for each pay schedule. Click on create. You'll see here there's a blue button for a terminated employee. So Mary Contrary has already been terminated. So that's been marked as final. Our actions button says mark all as final, and I accept that. So everyone now is marked as final, and then I will lodge with ATO. Once I click with ATO and it's a successful lodgement, then that informs the ATO that these employees for this particular business entity are no longer active for the financial year of 18-19, and the employees' tax returns can be completed by their agent. So same process as before, click with the ATO, lodge with ATO, and it goes through that processing wizard. And that is as simple as single touch payroll gets in QuickBooks Online and KeyPay.
Wow.
Rapid, what I've just done, but yeah, the concepts are there. So, I mean, my advice basically is that you treat it the same as your normal sort of pay finalisation that you would have done with regard to your payment summaries. There's nothing really that changes. You still have to do your cross checks and balances, and so rather than being pressured to make sure it's all hunky-dory for that very last pay run, just process your pay run as normal and then take the time to run that update event.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Terrific. Well, Di, that's a great introduction to QBO and the STP process. Before we let you go, have you got any other sort of thoughts just generally on single touch payroll and your experiences so far?
Yeah, look, if you haven't already sort of started this journey with your clients, then you still do have time. Remember, it's July 1 is the official kickoff date, but we've got till September 30 to really bring everyone across. So it's not too late to start, and don't panic if you haven't. So I think the operative word there is, don't panic. But just start having those conversations and get people across, and it'll be a journey that is really not that challenging. And don't be scared if there are changes, like I've just shown you. If there are issues in your pay run, make those corrections, because STP is all about year-to-date reporting. So year-to-date reporting, the next pay run brings through the corrected figures. So it's not, it's not that challenging.
Fantastic. All right, well, Di, legend of the bookkeeping industry, thanks for your time today. Appreciate you joining us again on Bookkeeper Radio.
Thanks again for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Di.
Next on our Legends list is Kerry Jarius, Principal of Brilliant Admin Solutions, based in Canberra, a Gold Partner with MYOB, and also an ABA Director, Australian Bookkeepers Association Director. Kerry, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Kelvin and Pete. Thanks for having me.
All right, firstly, Kerry, just a quick comment, if I can, from you in regards to just remaining a little bit calm through the STP process and the time frame that we've got to deal with this. How are you experiencing it so far?
Look, we've got a few people that are actually in the 20 plus category, so we've had a bit of a head start. But I know most bookkeepers have not had that head start. So we're sort of finding it, it's pretty scary the first time that you put your STP together for the first client. But once you've done one or two, it's not as scary as you'd think. It's that fear of the unknown that I think everybody's having a problem with. So with timelines, you've got plenty of time to do it. Don't panic about the 1st of July. The ADO is going to get smashed on the 1st of July and September. So I think if everybody has a look at it and says, don't think about starting on the 1st of July, maybe get yourself ready, start towards the end of the July when the rush is over and you can actually speak to the helplines and the ATO helplines who are really helpful. Then have a look at starting maybe end of July. Don't think about the 1st of July at the moment as the day that you have to start. It is a softly approach. So don't panic about getting it done on the 1st of July.
Yeah, good advice. All right, well, at that then we might hand over to you, the controls, the share screens, and get you underway.
Sure. So first of all, we're going to have a look at MYOB and what products that they have for single touch payroll. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the offerings that MYOB have. Basically, with MYOB, there's two main products that they're using, which is AccountRight and MYOB Essentials. The connection process is fairly similar between the two of them, but there is also this $10 a month for your clients that have got 1 to 4 employees that are not currently using any payroll software. So have a look at the Essentials package if that's what you need, and that's their payroll only offering. So let's have a look at a live file. What I'd suggest that everybody does, or what I'm going to do, is I'm actually going to connect my own MYOB file for you guys today. So what I'm suggesting is that you either connect your own file, or if you don't have any employees, pick one of your favorite clients that doesn't mind opting in early. So either opt your own file in early or opt in for one of your clients. Now that's going to give you a bit of a head start so that you can have a look at it. My staff actually wanted us to opt in early so that they can have a look at their MyGov accounts and see how it works, because they feel that if they're doing it themselves, they can explain to our clients a lot easier if they know what they're doing. So this is actually going to be a live demo of me actually connecting my own file. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go into your payroll reporting. So this is the screen that comes up, and this is where you're going to actually keep going back to make sure that you've got everything right. It's one of your principal screens in MYOB. So down here you've got this company information. So the first thing you would do is check your company information. If you click on that, it gives you your company details and all your contact details. So you want to be making sure that you've got the correct company name, your ABN. So we're talking the agents. This is my company file. So this is not the agent, this is actually the file or the client's file. So this would be your file or the client's details. Your ABN, addresses. The things that will bomb is if your branch number is not 001, or if it's a different branch number, it's not going to be recognised with the ATO. So that's a common problem there in itself. So you're going to be checking those details. Then you keep going back to this check payroll details. So when you go here, it will tell you everything that is wrong with your file. So as we go through and we check things, if there's something wrong, it will tell you what's going on. So it's a little bit like join the dots. If it's wrong, it's not going to let you go to the next stage. So in your payroll here, when you go to payroll, you've got your payroll categories. Everything in STP is going to be connected from these payroll categories. Click your payroll categories. So you've got all your tabs across here. So it's not just wages that we're looking at to connect. So I've connected a lot of these just for time purposes, and you'll see that some of these are already connected. So each one, let's say it's in your advance, click on the blue button, and it will say to be assigned. Drop down menu, and it will give you all the items that you can actually connect to. So these are ATO items, they're not from MYOB. These are actually the items that the ATO has specified that we have to connect to. So in the case of advance, it's gross payments. So then we're going to go OK. And you'll see that now that has gross payments. I've left a couple there that we can have a look at each one. So car kilometre rate. So you would go in there to be assigned, and then you would go down to allowance car. Click, and then you simply go through all those categories. One of the problems that I've come across is that we've got MYOB files that are very old. You've got clients who have got a lot of categories that they either don't use or they have, we had one and we had 150 payroll categories to connect.
Wow.
Which was just crazy. We had to do it in blocks. It took us ages to do it. So what do you do with categories that you don't need anymore? If you look, what I've done with the ones that we're not using is I've put an XX in front of these, and you'll see, if you can see my cursor, that I've made those not reportable. But because we don't use those anymore, so you've got bereavement leave, got taken over by personal leave. So you've got MYOB files with a lot of history. So unfortunately, some of these take quite a while to clean up. It's actually a good time to clean up your categories as well. So what about some of the more obscure things that get connected? We've got your base hourly, that's simple. So you're just going to go gross payments. So majority of your stuff is going to be gross payment, or it's going to be allowances. But what about CDEP payments? Let's click on that and have a look. And you'll find that there is a category for CDEP.
Yep.
So you can click to that. It's fairly intuitive as to what to do, but where a lot of confusion is coming in is with redundancies and ETP payments. So you're going to have two categories usually. You might have more ETP. So if you scroll down, where people are getting stuck is they're not scrolling down. They're just going to this top screen, and all they're seeing is these, and they're saying there's not a category for that. So make sure that you're scrolling down on your screen. And so this is our tax-free component. And that was something that I had a client ring me and say, I can't connect, there's not enough categories. They just simply weren't scrolling down that screen. So ETP payable, and see how it can actually be right down the bottom. So that can be a bit of a trick for wary players. So we'll go down here. Now, there's a few things that people don't do. They don't click along. So here's your superannuation guarantee. Pretty easy. Click on it. There's only one option, superannuation guarantee. So that's the only option to that. Entitlements, well, you're not going to have anything to connect there. Deductions, you won't have anything. You will only have union fees, or that's generally the only one that you would have. If you've got random deductions that clients are doing, just set them to non-reportable, because those ones are actually not reportable on your payment summary.
Would that include things like childcare withholdings, Kerry?
Yes. Yes, because they're not actually reportable on your payment summary. So if it's not reportable, it's not reportable. Simple as that.
Social clubs, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, all those sort of things. Taxes, well, you've only got one choice there, so you just go down and you do your PAYG withholding. Okay, so now there is, in your payroll categories, there's one other thing that I need to show you, is when a little bit of a trap, and I did this the other day where I couldn't work out why my car allowance wasn't connecting and it kept bombing. It was because this exempt button had all those ticked, and I could not for the life of me work out why it would not accept. Just check that these buttons are not ticked. Otherwise, it's actually going to bomb your connection to that category. I will show you the exam. I've got a little screen further on that I can show you on that. So now we've gone through here and we've got everything connected. So let's close that. We're going to go back to our payroll reporting and we're going to go check payroll details. And it's saying, okay, we're happy with everything in the payroll categories, but one of your employees doesn't have a tax file number. So we then have to, and you can click from this screen to go into your employee cards and change anything that's needed. So because I don't want to tell you this person's tax file number, I'm actually going to make it the under 18 tax. And I will fix that up later. So then if we go back to our payroll categories, to our check payroll details, now says all your company information and employee details meet ATO requirements. Happy days.
Yep.
So your next job is to actually connect to the ATO. Now, I'm hoping this will work because we're doing it live. It'll give you set up your payroll reporting and connect. So you're going to be doing this as a BAS agent. You're not going to be doing it for the client. So you just follow the bouncy ball, read the screen and go start. So are you someone from the business? Are you a tax agent or a BAS agent? Now, the ATO has been getting pretty cranky with BAS agents and with bookkeepers doing the connection for their clients on their behalf. You've got to remember you cannot do that on your client's behalf. You can sit there and guide them through the process, but there is a privacy issue that you can't pretend to be somebody else. So make sure that if you are connecting for your client, that they're sitting beside you and you're doing it with them and simply guiding them through the process. There has been some issues with that. So with this, we're going to connect as a BAS agent. So agent ABN, if I can. So everybody now knows my ABN, my agent number, which is all publicly available anyway. Now we're going to search that. Okay, you'll see that my agent details now come up. The reason my agent details are coming up is because I have actually connected through Access Manager. So I have connected my SID with MYOB through Access Manager, and I don't have to ring the ATO because they've already got my details, which is a lot easier way of doing it than actually ringing direct to the number, because the number's going to get really busy, particularly in those peaked periods that we were talking about. So let's just have a quick look at some slides that I've got on registering your agent number. So let's have a bit of a look at the portal and how to find Access Manager. Initially, I had a few problems finding Access Manager because I was actually looking through my BAS agent portal. The gentleman tell me that you can actually do a direct search and your Access Manager will come up. But for me, I actually went into my BAS agent portal and then couldn't find it. So if you can see up here, there is actually a tab that says Access Manager. And when you open it up, this screen below is what you will see. So if you scroll down the side, it's actually a little bit hard to find because there's layers upon layers of things in the portal, and unless you know where to look, it can be quite frustrating as to where to find it. So if you go down this left-hand side and you go My Hosted SBR Software, so that would be all your software that you're going to see today. That'll either your QBO, Reckons, your and MYOB. One of the things with QBO was that it's KeyPay, but I'm sure Di told you that.
Yeah.
With the software ID for MYOB, so as an agent, you have your own software ID. So your SID, which is down here, is the same for every file that you're going to connect, because they're looking at your agent profile, and that SID is what is connecting your agent profile to your file. So that doesn't matter whether you own the file or your client owns the file. It's actually those details that you're registering within the live software. So let's go back to the live software and have a look. Okay, so we're back in our live file, and you'll see that these are the details, as we said before, that came up. So we're just going to continue here. Now, I need to put in the payer ABN again, so I'm putting in mine. So this is the contact details that I'm going to be putting into this file for who the ATO is going to contact. So I should have put a different number in there, otherwise you're all going to ring me, aren't you?
Yeah, you now. Well, just got it down.
Got it now. Okay. So it's saying add client in the BAS agent portal. So this is where you would make sure that you've got it in Access Manager, or you can actually notify in the next screen. So you can launch your BAS agent portal from here. No, I've added this client. Okay, so here you've got the options. Your option 1 is to phone the ATO. Option 2, create notification in Access Manager. So that's what we just looked at before. So this software ID is unique to me. So as a BAS agent, that software ID will be the same for every one of my files. And everywhere that you go, you've got access, you've got little points where you can actually launch where to go. So there's no need to go in and out of this screen. You just have to stay in that screen. So
before you move on there, Kerry, that launch access manager. So our understanding is that, you know, as you say, from a bulk notifications point of view, as long as you've got your clients linked to you as a BAS agent, then that process only has to happen once. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah. And I have checked that with the ATO, and I've also checked it with MYOB, and they both agreed.
Okay, great.
So now we say, I've notified the ATO, and we're going to save and complete the setup. Okay, so let's process a payroll and see what it looks like when you actually process a payroll. This is the step that most people are getting a little bit concerned about, because there doesn't seem to be any information anywhere on where to do this. So, and I haven't seen any videos. I'm sure there are in some of the training sessions, but there's not much around about how to actually do this. And once you get past this step, and how to do the declaration. So if we go to here, so once you've processed your payroll, it's going to ask you for a declaration. So this is send payroll information to the ATO. So I'm the authorised sender.
Yep.
So I'm going to put my name in here, and I'm going to send that. Okay, next. And it's as simple as that. So let's go to the Payroll Reporting Centre, and there's that pay there.
Right.
Okay, so that's how simple it is. So it's really just one more step. Once you've finished your payroll, is to actually just send that declaration off to the ATO. So then you've got this Payroll Reporting Centre. So this is where all your information is at the moment. Now, where people are getting hung up on this is they're trying to reconcile every payroll or every pay process to what is at the ATO. To be honest, it really doesn't matter. So all you're doing is updating your year-to-date figures, each pay. the only one that matters when it's right is when you're going to this end of year finalisation.
Yeah.
So you've got your reports, and this is going to give you a list of what you've done. So if you can I'll just go to another screen to show you what it would look like when you've got multiple weeks being processed. I just wanted to show you this screen. This is the screen of a client that we've been doing for STP since STP started, just to give you an idea of what it's going to look like when you've got multiple payrolls being processed. You'll see down the bottom here that there's some items that are not sent. Don't get too hung up on that. The truth of the data is actually in this last one that has been posted. So because you've got ones down here that are not sent, don't be tempted to go back and resend those, because you could be overriding data that is already contained within these pay runs. So be very careful that, remember, your source of truth is the last pay run that you've actually posted. So everything gets wiped and you start again with new year-to-date figures. This is why there's no point in actually reconciling every payroll, because all you're going to be doing is wasting your time and your client's money. Now let's go back to the live file and we'll have a look. So this is the file that we just looked at. This is my file. And if you have a look, this is your reports. The reason that I'm showing you this is because the other file I can't show you because it's one of my live files, so it wouldn't be fair on my client to be showing you information. So here we've got employee terminations. So all your employees that are coming up here, and remember this is just a shell because we've only just connected this file, so there's very little data in here. You can actually terminate employees before the end of the financial year if you were doing a part year summary. So if you have a look at this, finalise an employee who won't be paying again this financial year, use this as a part year payment summary. You've got somebody going overseas and they want their payment summary before they go, or for some reason you're going to issue a payment summary mid-year, this is where you would do it. Your end of year finalisation. So this is the key screen at the end of all this process. So this is where you look at your payroll activity summary and you compare that. This is where your reconciliation is done. You would be comparing your payroll activity summary to what's in this screen. If it's not the same, then that's when you're going to have to start doing some of your checks as to what's gone wrong. And then over here, you've got your ATO settings. So remember when we put in our SID? So this is the information that is sent with every payroll item. So that's your name, your SID for your MYOB software, and you'll see that it's always the same. So basically that's it for the live software. Now I'll just go back to a couple of screens and show you a couple of things that can go wrong. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the rejection reports that are quite common in single touch payroll. So people are worried that if things go wrong, they don't know how to fix it. There's a lot of help out there. These are some of the things that will go wrong. The wrong ABN has been entered during setup, so they can't match it. Then I'm sure we can send this out at the end of the session or put it in the kit, which will give you some links as to the resolutions of what can go wrong. It's mainly that you've put the wrong information in, you've transposed a number, or there's something that doesn't match in your MYOB file to what the ATO has got in their registration. So there is actually a couple of things that you can have a look at too. I was speaking to MYOB's helpline this morning, and they were saying that these 3 errors are the majority of the errors that they get. So we haven't really got time to get into that today, but if you have a look at these links, and MYOB have got some really great resources on their website, but their helpline, they've actually got a dedicated STP helpline at the moment. So you'll find that you can actually talk to a person, you can work through things that you may have problems with. So I actually find I love MYOB's helpline at this time of the year, because sometimes it's just really nice to talk to a person.
Mm-hmm.
So that's about it for me. What I'd like to do is there's about 3 points that I'd like to just reiterate at the end of the session. And one is, don't panic. Remember that it's only year-to-date figures that are updated, so there's no need to reconcile every payroll. And it's a softly approach from the ATO, so it's going to be a gradual roll-in process. So if you're seen to be doing the right thing or attempting to be doing the right thing, nobody's going to come down on you. Everybody's there to help you. So take some of that fear factor out, relax, in with good, out with the bad, and in, and you should get through it.
Fantastic. Great session there.
Well, we can relax. We've got a hammock.
Yeah, we've got a hammock.
Yeah. Get a hammock.
Grab a
Relax.
glass of wine or something.
Yeah, we should.
Just chill out. So, look, thanks, Kerry. That was a fantastic session
magnificent.
on MYOB's STP solutions. And probably the one thing that you brought in there, Pete and I alluded to in session one, was that access manager. So it's great that you've done a little bit of a demonstration on that as well. So fantastic. So thank you very much for your time today. Bit busy lady, no doubt, coming into the 30th of June. Really appreciate your time. And thanks for joining us on Bookkeeper Radio.
Thank
Okay,
you.
good luck with it all.
Thank you.
All right, well, we're about to welcome our third legend in the bookkeeping space, Joe Crumpton, who is going to walk us through the Xero aspects of the getting your hands dirty in the single touch payroll space. So, Joe, welcome to Bookkeeper Radio.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Joe, before we get into the actual demonstration itself, can we just get a comment from you on how you're finding, you know, the single touch payroll process and how you're dealing with your clients so far?
I guess all the clients are actually not too bad with it. All we're getting is lots of emails saying, have you got it in control? And we're saying, sure thing, we have it in control. And then hoping that we will have it in control, but that by that time. I guess the scary bit is you not really sure how it's going to work until you actually do it. So that's what we're going to do today, is just show you what it looks like. But in fact, we've had very, very few problems. I checked with Xero Xero support too to see what major problems they've had, so I'll address those today, but there really haven't been too many. It's easier than we think it is. It's nothing to be scared of.
Yeah, so you're in that same boat really, like, you know, don't hit the panic button. There's a transition period, 1 July to 30 September, transition your clients over. And as you say, once you get up and going with it, the process is fairly straightforward.
And there's always a chance to correct errors. I mean, there's always issues with payroll in terms of somebody forgot to tell you about a leave or forgot to tell you about a termination or something. All that can be handled exactly the same way as it was before. So yeah, nothing to worry about.
All right, terrific. All right, well, we'll get into the demonstration. So I'll pass the controls over to you to share your Xero file.
Okay. Okay, so I've decided to share a live file with you. Xero does have STP and the whole STP set up in their demo file, so you can play around with that as well. Even to the extent of filing a pay run, reversing a pay run, and all the things that we're going to do now. But just to show what it's like from the very beginning, we're using a live file. It's my company, so I'm not sharing any confidential details. And I'm going to run a payroll for myself and then reverse a payroll for myself. So, and we're starting from the beginning. This file is not yet connected to STP, so we're going to start from the very, very beginning. The STP connection in Xero is pretty simple. There's a few things to look for that need to be set up, but you don't really have to set them up before you start. The process prompts you to do it as you go along. The only thing is if you've set them up before you start, of course, it's less annoying because you don't have to stop and start and fix things up. The main things that have to be set up are your organizational details in Xero have to be there. So the ABN, the trading name, the address, and the telephone number. If they're in, you'll be able to process through very easily. You won't have to stop and start. The employee details, date of birth, address, employment type, and tax file details are the main things. As long as you've got those in, you won't be held up. But again, if you haven't done it or you've forgotten, the system will prompt you before it will allow you to file a pay run. The one thing that is new due to single touch payroll is allowances now in Xero have to have a category. Now, so when you set up a new allowance now in Xero, it'll prompt you to have a type of allowance, and they're pretty simple. There's travel, there's car, there's laundry, there's meals, and there's other. So any of those that don't fit into any of those, you can put into other. But for ones that you've set up prior to STP, of course, they won't have a category. But again, the whole setup of STP will prompt you to add a category, so you can do it on the fly when you file. So you don't really need to go back in and recategorize everything before you start. The only reason to do that was so you didn't get held up while you're going through. But don't worry, you can't really forget anything. So this file here, I'm going to start from the beginning and start to set it up. I hope my organisational details are correct, but we'll see. So I've assumed that the pay runs are correct for the year, just that you would assume that in your normal Xero file. Whether you have current or terminated employees doesn't make any difference. It doesn't matter if they're terminated and you can't see them on the pay run now. I think that's the same for all the softwares. Just don't stress about that. Those terminated employees' details will come up in the finalization. So the way to set up STP is under the payroll section. You can either go to pay employees or you can go straight to single touch payroll. So if you go to pay employees, you may see the original something here saying set up payroll. I've already touched that, so it's disappeared. That's what it will look like. So you just go, okay, get started. And it tells you to opt into single touch payroll. You'll then have to file your pay runs and so forth, and it will replace payment summaries. So you can just read that and opt out if you're not ready and you don't want to start till next year. But I'm going to start for this year so that you can see what happens. The first thing that comes up is those organisational details that I said had to be up there. So this is the trading name, the ABN, the postal address, and the phone number. And as long as they're right there, if you've set those up in settings, those will come up automatically. If anything needs to be changed, go into update payment organisation details. If all that's fine, continue. Now this is the connection step with the ATO and your SSID, your software ID number. Now every agent has an SSID, so my SSID number will be the same for all my clients, for all my Xero files. All the information you need is on this screen. So to connect to the ATO, you can either link through to the Access Manager, which will take you straight through and you can add Xero. And I think Kerry has done that previously. Yeah. Or you can phone this number here and give them your details, but all the details you need to give them are here in the bottom part of the screen anyway. You only need to do that once and it will work for all the clients that you have on your BAS agent portal. So one of the most common connection errors, if you've rung up the ATO or put Xero SSID into Access Manager, the main reason it won't work is if you don't have that client in your BAS portal as your client. Perhaps you're being kicked off by the accountant or something, but check in your ATO portal that client's there if you're having trouble connecting. I spoke to Xero support and that's one of the main reasons. There doesn't seem to be too many other issues with it unless just something's down for a short period of time. If you've already connected with another client, you just don't need to do anything with this screen. You just assume that you have connected. Now, this one I haven't connected. So
Joe,
I'm going to have to do that.
just to
Yep.
interrupt you there, Joe. So if a bookkeeper, as you say, is doing multiple clients and they've done their first client, will this screen even appear on that client?
It
on the
will
next
appear,
clients in that
and
role?
I think that's a little bit confusing.
Okay.
It will appear, but you just tick this thing at the bottom, I have contacted ATO to connect my Xero account.
Okay.
And then you continue. In this case, I'm not registered, so it's not appearing, but it will in a minute once we register.
Mm-hmm.
So this screen will always look the same, but you just press continue if you've already phoned them, or if any of your staff have phoned them as well,
Mm-hmm.
or connected in your Access Manager. So if the phone number at the ATO is engaged and you can't phone them, you can connect through the Access Manager if you haven't already connected your practice to with Xero to the ATO. And there's a link here, so you would just click on that and it would take you straight to the Access Manager, which will log in using your Oz key. Okay, this practice is already connected to the ATO, so I just tick this with a previous client or earlier, so I just tick this box. I don't have to ring up again, and now I register. It gives you the chance here where you don't actually put the registration through, but you've checked all your details. You're not registered until you actually press this button here. So you can go through and check all this beforehand, and it doesn't commit you to anything, so until you press the register button. The next thing we have is something that pops up and says opening balances. Now in this will prompt you. This is the next thing that you have to decide. Now if you have transitioned to Xero through the year, during the year, and you have some opening balances, you put opening balances in the client. So if you've moved from MYOB or you've started a file from somebody who was doing it manually and you entered opening balances, this is a point where you have to tell that to Xero. If you closed off the old software and did payment summaries and so forth, then you would tick the top button, but I don't think many people do that. Mostly you won't report during the year. You'll just put opening balances into your new file. In that case, you click this one. So when you run your payroll reports in Xero, you often see opening balances if they come in as a total in the month that you put them in. This will just give the year to date total with to the ATO when you report. So most commonly you'd use this second button if you haven't done any reporting to the ATO so far this year. So that's really the only choice you have to make. And save that. So now we've checked the organisation details. We've done the connection to the ATO and we've nominated what to do with our opening balances. And that's pretty much it. Then you start to run the pay runs. So we're all connected now for single touch payroll. If you want to check your settings, they're always available here to check. So you can go through and check your details, change them, change what you do with the opening balances. So they're always there for you to check. That won't go away. So I'm going to make a new pay run here. And it's only me on the pay run, so no privacy issues at all, apart from myself. I'm going to pay myself a pretty good wage, and I'm going to I also have an allowance in there, and I haven't nominated what sort of allowance it is. So now that we've registered for STP, everything else is exactly the same in terms of running a payroll. So I just run that, I post it, post the pay run. Now the extra, so this now pops up and says that I haven't allocated this allowance type. So that's what I'm saying. No need to worry about if you've forgotten to do everything before you start, because the prompts come up along the way to tell you what you have and haven't done. So I'm now going to go into that, and I'm going to say, oh, well, that was a car allowance, for example, or no, let's say laundry allowance. I know it's too much for a laundry allowance, but let's say it was, and save that. And that will nominate where it appears in the payment summary. So the only difference now that you've registered is you'll have this file button come up, the green file button, and the green file button is your STP filing. So now that I've completed that pay run, I'm just going to file it with the ATO. It's going to ask me, am I authorized? And I'll just say yes, same as with BASs and so forth, and submit to the ATO. That's it. So pending, and then it'll come up with the word filed. So it's as easy as that. Now you're done. So to undo this pay run, I could just revert that pay run to draft and refile it, put all the figures as nil, but I'm not going to. I'm going to fix it by doing an unscheduled pay run. And with the pay calendar, I'm sure you all know how to do this. Now, in order to help you do this, Xero will allow you to date the unscheduled pay period as far back as the pay run calendar, back to the start of that pay run calendar. So you can, I could have dated this, if this pay run calendar had started on the 1st of July, I could have taken it back that far. And don't forget that it's just the final figures that are year-to-date figures that are reported to the ATO. So if you make a change for earlier in the year, obviously it'll change your year-to-date figures and it will all even out. So I'm just going to go into this unscheduled pay run for this last week, and I'm going to tick this person that I've decided I've overpaid, and I'm going to basically reverse that pay run. And I'm going to save that. Close, post the pay run. And file that pay run. So basically I've filed a pay run and then a minus pay run for the same amount. So the net that will be reported in this last one to the ATO is a net payment of nothing to this person, because I've done a plus and minus for the same amount. So, so that's done. So that's it's as easy as that to make changes. You can either reverse the last pay run, only the last one, or else use an unscheduled to make the changes that you need to do. And really that's it. The only other thing that we have to do then is the finalization for the year. Now, before you do that, you would just do the normal checks that you would do before you did payment summaries. It's no different to doing that. So you check. So once the ATO has accepted these, this will change from pending to filed. So it depends how, it usually happens straight away. It depends what's happening with the ATO website. But it'll sit there until it's ready. Now the last thing to do is the finalization, which you would do at the end of the year. You just do the normal checks that you would have done with payment summaries to make sure the figures for each employee is correct. Then go to single touch payroll here, and you have a finalization option up here. This is the finalization for this year, and you would have a list of the employees. You can go in and edit them if the figures aren't correct, have a look at them, see what, reportable fringe benefits, even in the payment summaries, were always a manual field to fill in, so it's the same here. So you would add those at this point. If they give you another chance to change the STP settings, which is to bring in the opening balances, that's the only thing that allows you to do. So you would check each of these employees. Then once you're happy that the figures are correct, at exactly the same time you would have printed out the payment summaries or emailed the payment summaries, you do your finalisation here. You click that and you finalise and submit to the ATO. I'm not going to do this time because I don't want to do that at this stage, but it's the same thing. You finalise that and it comes up with, are you authorised to do this? Tick the box and submit, and that's all there is to it. And as I say, you keep the same work papers as you would have had if you were doing payment summaries.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
All right, Joe, thanks very much for the demonstration on the Xero platform. Great session, and sure a lot of people will have learnt a lot through that, especially for the live demonstration. So I appreciate your time today, and thanks for joining us on Bookkeeper Radio.
No worries. Just don't be scared. It's all fine.
It is, yeah. Good final advice. Thanks very much, Joe. Talk to you later. Bye. Well, our final bookkeeping legend is Kim Chapman from COS Business Solutions. Kim, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Yourself?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us on Bookkeeper Radio.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'd much rather be where you are.
Hammock, relaxing. So Kim's going to share with us the Reckon platform and single touch payroll solutions on there. So Kim, I'll throw to you now to share your screen.
Okay.
That are STP enabled.
Start with one.
Okay, Kim, so before we go there, if you just wouldn't mind just telling us about those versions of Reckon that are STP enabled.
Yep, so Reckon have STP enabled all of their software. Reckon Accounts Hosted, Reckon Accounts Desktop, Reckon One and Payroll Premier. So what they've done is each of those software lodged through a portal called the GovConnect portal, and that enables them to lodge directly with the ATO from there.
Okay, so the only ones that we couldn't be using would be really old desktop versions if there are any of those lying around.
No, at the moment they've got a very brief window where they can upgrade on subscriptions. They've got some very good deals around, so if they just contact their professional partner or Reckon. But they do have to be on a minimum 2018, but they will have to be on 2019 with the tax patch enabled to be able to do a finalisation for the end of financial year. The advantage with, or one of the advantages I find with Reckon, especially in the backpacker industry, is you have a lot of backpackers that come and go throughout the year. So what they've done is we can do a finalisation at the end of the year. So it doesn't matter when our employers have come on throughout the year, that finalisation is going to make sure that every employee throughout the year has been lodged through using single touch payroll.
Wonderful.
All right, terrific.
All right.
All right. So yeah, we'll throw to you now, Kim, to share your screen.
Okay, so one of the things I think you've probably mentioned that you covered is when you go into the software that you have to ensure through the company information that the legal name is correct and is the same as the abr.gov.au website where you can check the ABN numbers. So basically, if that's capitals, it's got to be capitals, full stops, all the rest of it is the same within the software. From there, you also have to have the tax registration ID correct. If it's a 001, you can leave it out. But if you've got a branch extension number of 002 and beyond, you have to have that information in here. You need your payroll contact information, title and phone number. And of course the addresses and that of the business.
Okay.
From there, we go up to edit, down to preferences, and just enable single touch payroll from the payroll and employees tab under company preferences. And once that's ticked, you just go OK, and basically you're ready to start single touch payroll. In Reckon accounts though, you do have to add employee numbers. If we go to the employees tab, now you have to ensure that all of the information is entered correctly. So you must have your addresses, so date of births, addresses, and tax file number, information, etc., in the software all the time. If you don't have it in there, you have to use the ATO recommended tax file numbers. So, for instance, if they're under 18, I think it's the all threes.
All threes,
All
yeah.
threes, yep.
Yeah. And you will have to watch your tax codes, tax scales as well, because of the rules associated with, you know, if they don't supply the tax file number within 28 days, you have to take a higher rate of tax out.
Yeah.
So under employment info, you would put the employee numbers. Now, 2018 will allow you to duplicate it. 2019 won't. So once we've upgraded, and we're very close to 2019 being released for hosted, and that will have all the new information on it, the finalisation ability and all of the rest of it. So add the employee numbers for the employees, and then once that's done and all of your addresses and information are correct, you're pretty much ready to lodge STP. So you just do your pays as per normal. We go up to employees after you've done your pay, and this must be done either before or on payment date. So then process single touch payroll. From there, unhosted, it brings up this drop down. You just select your most recent pays. Obviously this is a play file, so the pays are pretty old. So your most recent date comes up at the start. You then select all employees that you're going to lodge. And of course, I've got some that don't have information. Probably all of them don't have tax file numbers or something.
Yep.
So from there, what you do, once you hit lodge, you'll save the STP file onto the Q drive. And then once you select OK, that's going to flick you straight through to the Reckon Gov Connect portal. So once you're in the portal, so I'm just going to switch over to a PowerPoint that I've got with screenshots of the portal because of it. So from here, you select all employees and then you hit lodge. Once you go lodge, that's going to prompt you to save the data file, so the JSON file. On Q Drive, hosted, it will be saved to Q Drive. And I will generally add a folder called STP files on Q Drive where I will save all the STP files. On the desktop, I tend not to set my clients up on the default location. I will always save a file on a folder on the desktop called STP files, and then I put in brackets desktop so that they can clearly see where they're saving it to.
Mm-hmm.
So once that's saved there and you go OK, it's then going to take you through to the Reckon Gov Connect portal. So from there, you register, but if it's the first time, you just select register for free. Of course, if you're doing Reckon 1, this is a bit different. It takes you straight across because you'll already have this all set up.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then, so you can either sign in with Google, you can sign in with Office 365, or you can register with Reckon with email address and password.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty straightforward, the setup. So once that's done, of course, we get to this window here. Now, once we hit Reckon Gov Connect, that's when you will be prompted for an MFA code. Now, Reckon have now introduced an SMS system where you can now SMS the code. So that makes it a lot easier where people go getting new phones and they forget that the MFA is on the phone. And then it's a bit of a problem. It's a big task trying to remove that.
Mm.
So most of my clients now, I'm setting up with text SMS messages. So from there, yep, MFA set up. And once that's done, so you've got the Google Authenticator, which we used to have to use. Once you've done the authentication, then it comes through for the ABN validation. So basically from here, you enter the ABN number in here. And again, if there's a branch number, you have to select the green icon and enter the branch number in there.
So just to be clear on that point, Kim, then, so the ABN that they're entering in there is their own ABN as a BAS agent where they're doing multiple files for clients, or the business ABN?
The business ABN.
The business ABN, okay.
To be honest, I've always set up my clients. I never really worried about looking into that. But no, I'm thinking that's got to be the business ABN of the client, because it's lodging their information.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the branch number. And once you hit verify, it's going to pull through the legal identification information from the ABR website, your email address. Then from there, you just hit submit. And basically what that does is it takes you through to the next screen, which is basically your file. And then you open that up. And then from there, you will select the type of payroll that you have. So if it's Reckon 1, obviously you set up Reckon 1, desktop, hosted. So obviously, if you're using desktop, you must select Reckon Accounts Desktop. If you're using Payroll Premier, then you're using the Payroll Premier program. Just be sure. I actually had one the other day that they'd used Reckon Payroll Premier, thinking that they were doing payroll on the desktop. So just make sure that that's right. And then once you've got that part right, save my settings, and then your icon will appear across here, depending on the version that you have. So most clients will only have one version showing there. So this one's set on Reckon Accounts Desktop. So if it's desktop, you then, so from here, this is where you set up your company and advisor. You'll click on your company and advisor info. Now, this is a bit of an old screenshot, but now up here, the company name will show, and underneath there will be the software ID. So you don't actually have to go into company advisor info anymore to get the software ID. But this is it here, how it used to be displayed. So once you get to this stage, this is where you now either go onto the portal or you ring the ATO and you say, I want to register this software ID for this company here with this ABN, and yeah, it goes from there. So just, I'll show you at the little bit at the end where I always set up this information for my clients, and then I get them to share the information with me. So I can see all of my clients' details, and then I can lodge on their behalf and everything using the shared with me file. But it's still registered. I've always registered it under my client's ABN.
Client ABN.
Yeah. Okay, assuming that all goes smoothly and you get a good person from the ATO, then you're now ready to start lodging single touch payroll. If you have another entity, of course, you would then add product and add another Reckon GovConnect product, and you would add the second entity. So if a client has multiple entities, they only set up GovConnect once, and then they have all the files under the one login.
All right, fantastic.
Okay, so yeah, so from there, I'll just backtrack a little bit. So we've gone upload. We've, of course, when you come from hosted, it won't have the, when you go upload, it's going to take you to Q Drive. When you have desktop or Payroll Premier selected, it's going to take you back to your desktop. If Reckon 1, it will actually bring the file directly from your Reckon 1 into the portal, so you don't have to upload anything. Once you've uploaded the file, it's going to sit here under draft, the status draft. The information here displayed is current payroll information. So that would be as per the payroll summary in Reckon accounts. And if you click detail from this point, that actually shows you the year-to-date information for those employees in that payroll. So from here, if that information is correct, we just hit submit, and then that information, you then have to declare. A little pop-up window comes up, and I think I might not have it there. There it is. Submit to ATO. I declare the information, type your name, and then confirm. And that's gone to the ATO.
Yep.
And that's done. And just keep in mind, it takes between, so once you, if you go back to here and you click on detail, it can take, assuming that says processed, I think is what it says. Once you click on detail, you'll be able to see whether it's successful or not, just by looking at the information. Because it can take between 3 minutes and 3 days for the ATO to actually process the single touch payroll.
Right, so that's a question we have had, Kim. So basically what you're saying is that when you hit that submit button, the Gov, like the Reckon Gov Connect will advise you that there has been a successful transmission of that file.
Yes, so
Okay.
when you click on detail, it brings up the information in here. I don't think I've actually got, oh, there we go. I do have a picture, and as you can see there, it says ATO status success.
Okay, yep, so that's where people know that they've had a successful transmission.
Yep, if it's a failure, basically it's got a details tab. You click on that tab and it'll say SID not matched, or some, you know, if you haven't forgotten that software ID process.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're all human.
So it'll give you the warning status for you to go and rectify whatever the failure was.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Fantastic.
Okay, I think that's, now, if you get say you get an employee that, or an employer that's under four employees, they have some special rules that they're allowed to follow, some exemptions. And one of the things that Reckon have introduced is the single touch payroll free app. So if Reckon also, in Reckon 1, they now have the standalone payroll, which is $5 a month. So it's a very cheap solution. It's quite easy to lodge STP using that. And so that's one option for them. But if they really don't want to spend any money and they really want to continue with their desktop or their pieces of paper or Excel sheet or whatever they use.
Manual solution.
Yes, then they can, oops, I should have gone back to, yeah. So if the employers really don't want to spend any money, they can install this free app on their phone. It's free. It's a lot more work, I think, than say your $5 Reckon 1 payroll. But you basically enter all of the employees' details onto the phone. You then have to manually enter the gross figures, the super PAYG withholding, the super amounts, and any allowances, and then that gets lodged with the ATO. Keep in mind, this is a separate software ID to the GovConnect portal, and this operates separately from the GovConnect portal at the moment, from what I understand, because I haven't had to set up one of these before, but it is an option out there for an employer that, you know, might only do one payroll or something like that.
We spoke about this one in our earlier webinar, Kelvin, and this was for those employers that normally up to 4, and where they were having trouble or difficulties getting an STP solution available. It could be that they just, they're in an area that doesn't allow them appropriate connections, or they're just, their own systems aren't up to speed in the short term. They get an extension for 2 years to lodge on a quarterly basis through a third-party application like this. So it's only, as you said, Kim, it's not the ideal solution, but it's been put up as a temporary for up to 2 years, lodging through a BAS agent on this basis, yeah. Because
there's no tax checks and no super calculations using this way.
No, it's just rekeying data, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's duplication, but it still gets the data in there in the form that they need it.
Yes. One final thing I thought I'd better share with you is the payroll setup in Reckon accounts and also in Reckon One as well. So if we go to lists, payroll item list, we just have to obviously gross payments for all of your hourly pays. And if you have anything, so child support obviously would not be linked, so that would not get reported using single touch payroll. If you have an allowance, as you're setting up the allowance, and so if we do an addition, so what is it? So tool allowance. Oh, I can't even spell tool allowance anymore. So then we go next. As you're setting it up, it will ask you where you want to assign it. So you need to assign it to the correct type of allowance, and that reports on your pay, well, on your single touch payroll, so that the ATO know what kind of allowance it is. So if it was, for instance, a first aid allowance, of course, that would be considered as a gross payment. So you wouldn't select the first aid allowance as an allowance as such. It's technically, while it is technically allowance, it's not a reportable allowance. And yeah, that's pretty much about all there is. It's not that difficult. And once you're lodging using single touch payroll, no more payment summaries or income statements. I've just switched to Reckon One because at the moment that's the only software ready to go for the finalisation. And I actually did one this morning with Reckon One, and it was seamless. So obviously I've just landed, so you've got your information guides from within there which you can click on. But so from there, you do your payroll as per normal, and then in Reckon One, you go to single touch payroll, and then from there, if you're lodging normal payroll, pretty much, I'll just run this through. So you click on the specific pay run, and so that takes you through to the next window, and then you should be able to go lodge. I've got, so there we go there, and then we go send to GovConnect. So that takes that information straight through to GovConnect.
Okay.
And that will prompt you to log in and things like that. So for end of financial year, it's exactly the same. So except that we go process single touch payroll. So we click on this one, and it's doing something in the background. I think it's switching over to, yeah. So process single touch payroll EFY. So there's nothing there yet. We then click on add, and we select the year that we're wanting to lodge. I'll try 2018-19. Hopefully I've got some information in there. And we go add single touch payroll EFY report. That brings up all of the information for our employees for the year. So we just click on that information to open it. If we're happy with that, we can check that against our employee payroll summaries. I'm probably fairly confident that this is the only employee I've got in this file this year. And then we just go send to GovConnect STP. That will take that information straight through to the STP portal. Obviously, I've got an error because I don't have the portal set up.
Don't have the API connected.
Yeah.
But, and then basically you just lodge it just like you would normal single touch payroll.
Yep.
And all of your end financial year data is through. The ATO has now been notified that your payroll is finalised, and that information will now be posted onto the tax information, and so pre-filled in onto all of the forms and that. And also I think my daughter had a look at her MyGov account the other day. She works for a fairly big company. There was nothing on there. So I think nothing might post to the MyGov account until the finalisation is done. And that must be when it goes to the MyGov account.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it comes up on the MyGov account with a tax-ready flag on
tax
it.
ready status. Yep.
And that means that the person can use that and rely, once you've done your finalisation, they can then use that to lodge their tax return.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
All right, fantastic. So just one final question there, Kim, before we move off finalisations. And you said you obviously deal, being in the Bundaberg region, with a number of backpackers and the like. So you're saying that you can do this process either at the end of financial year when the entire process is done. Is there an option to do it if an employee does want their income statement earlier than the end of financial year in case they are leaving the country or doing something else?
if the payroll is actually, if they're terminated within the software, then that information will be, as long as that's done prior to the STP being done, that information should flow through to the ATO, and then they're notified via that information that they've been terminated.
Okay, so on a termination in a normal pay run, that employee would then flag with the ATO as being finalised for the year.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic.
That's my understanding of how it's going, how it works.
Okay, terrific. All right, well that brings to a close the Reckon single touch payroll options presented by Kim Chapman. So Kim, thanks very much for sharing your wisdom with us today. Great episode, and yeah, obviously each piece of software is a little bit unique in how they deal with certain aspects, but a great walkthrough there of the Reckon product. So thanks for sharing, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, Kim.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes the STP sessions. Instalment 1, of course, was getting your head in the game and a little bit more of the theory around single touch payroll. And this session here, we thank all of our presenters for sharing with us their specific knowledge on the various software platforms. So thank you, bookkeeping legends. Well done to you.
Thank you.
And Pete, would you like to share with us a little bit more? We've got a single touch payroll guide that we put together to accompany these videos. So do you want to share with listeners what's included in that?
I would.
Good work.
Yeah. Look, just a little reminder, if you've seen this video, you will have also been told how you can get hold of what we call a single touch payroll guide, which will help you transition into single touch payroll. The guide includes lots and lots of commonly asked questions about those ready to set sail into STP. So it's a reasonably lengthy document, but it does have the sorts of questions you are likely to come across if you're just getting ready for STP. It includes lots and lots of questions that we've had from bookkeepers. It also includes a section which has some tax office links, these are links to resources that we referred to in the earlier videos, or links to resources that we think are extremely useful if you're setting sail with STP, including the guide for employees in STP, exceptionally good publication, that one. There's also a few links there for software companies and resources that they've got available for single touch payroll as well. So commend the guide to you, and you might find some useful reference and help there.
Fantastic. Thanks, mate. So key takeaway, you've got time on your side. So relax about single touch payroll, take a deep breath, relax in your hammock, transitioning from 1 July through to 30 September. So you've got time on your side to deal with this with your clients. And I think that's probably the key message that everyone should be taking from these sessions.
The world will not end on the 1st of July.
It will not.
It will not.
All right, well, that's it for another Bookkeeper Radio. And good luck with financial year end and, of course, your transition through to STP. Speak to you soon.
Thank you.